What was the secret reason that Palpatine adored General Grievous? Welcome back to the archives, Acolytes of the Force. Sidious was a man who respected power in any form, while still valuing the power of the dark side above any. As a Sith Lord, he would use many things to accomplish his goals, from rituals to technological terrors. But the one project that Sidious seemed to be the most pleased with above all of his work was General Grievous. While Dooku looked down upon the cyborg warrior, Sidious loved him and would use foundations laid by Grievous for many more endeavors to come. One of those, of course, being Darth Vader, whose suit was based heavily on the components of Grievous's body. Unlike Dooku, Sidious didn't look at Grievous as a burdensome monster, and in fact, he seems to have enjoyed watching Grievous run amok during the Clone Wars era. So what was it about the cyborg that caught Sidious's eye, and why did he repeatedly try to replicate the Grievous experiment in many other areas of the Empire? Well, join us today, my friends, as we break down exactly why Palpatine adored Grievous. But before we breach the consciousness of the Dark Lord, we must inform you of some breaches within our own archives. Many of you who are watching have not yet subscribed, so if you want to be notified when we upload new holocrons every single day, smash that subscribe button and become an acolyte. Now, let us begin. Sidious's fascination with Grievous can be traced all the way back to the moment of his creation. A Kaleesh war general who was badly damaged and nearing death from his starship exploding was found and recovered by Dooku. He was brought back to a facility on Geonosis, where Grievous was then put under the care of a Sand Hill scientist and a chairman of the IBC. The same species as Plagueis, Sand Hill was a moon who was obsessed with scientific creations, specifically cybernetics, as he would perfectly preserve the Kaleesh general in a bacta tank before making him an offer that he could not refuse. At first, General Grievous was furious that he had been recovered and was saved from death. Based upon his people's moral and religious code of honor, he should have died with his troops who fell on the starship. But now, missing his arms and the lower half of his body and much of his skin tissue, Grievous had been forced to remain alive and weak. But soon, his mind would be altered when Sand Hill proposed an offer to him, become one whose strength and power rivaled that of a Jedi Master. Should he do as they wished and led the Separatist army, the intergalactic banking clan would personally end the famine happening on Kalee, the homeworld of Grievous. In honor of his people and his ancestors, the general agreed to become a cyborg. However, what he didn't know was that Dooku would do to him during the transformation against his will. Against the general's wishes, his brain was altered. Dooku removed any trace of honor or nobility, replacing it with cold vengeance and unparalleled rage. He would have the now General Grievous trained in his new body, and the cyborg exceeded all of Dooku's expectations. In his official report to Sidious, Sidious said that he could actually feel Grievous's icy hatred through the Force, as he had this to say: "I feel it. Beneath the very indestructible shell lies the strategic mind of a general, one who has embraced the way of the Sith. He feels no remorse and fears no consequence, including death. One might even say that he is no longer alive." Sidious concedes to the fact that Grievous has embraced the way of a Sith Lord. Palpatine doesn't consider Grievous to be a Sith, but he loves the fact that this lesser being has risen above his weaknesses, embraced the way of fury and the dark side, despite not being able to feel the Force. To this end, Grievous earns Sidious's respect and his admiration, at least a small modicum of it. One doesn't exactly need to feel the Force to embrace the Sith. Many have done this before. To know their way is to feel nothing but hatred and anger, to use pain as strength, and to strive for greatness, to subjugate one's enemies, to rule, and to crave power above everything. On the last note, one must be willing to do anything to gain power, even if that means betraying and exterminating allies. Grievous was both incredibly powerful, ambitious, and had enough cowardice to make him smart enough to survive just about any encounter. His honor was completely gone. He cared little for his people now. He played dirty, using the multiple limbs to trick or deceive enemies in order to take them down quickly. Even Darth Bane himself would approve of this. An example, when Lord Bane held another Sith Lord by the throat with the Force itself, as the Sith Lord begged to let him go and allow them to settle it with a proper duel. But Bane was disgusted by what the Sith had become. They didn't battle for glory, they fought to kill and to achieve power. Needless to say, Bane did not let the Sith Lord down, but instead snapped his neck. It is this willingness to deceive, to never play fair, to never give your enemy an advantage, that embodies what it means to be a Sith. On the subject of Grievous's cowardice, it doesn't seem as though Palpatine minded this very much at all. Like everyone else, Grievous was meant to play a role. He needed to be slimy, the fall guy for the Separatists' horrific actions. His lack of honor meant that he played this role perfectly. He killed plenty of Jedi in the process, which was always an upside for Palpatine. The only minor issue that he ran into was the fact that he couldn't control Grievous as finely as he could Dooku. Dooku was smart enough to know when to pull back, allowing Sidious to use the test of Anakin's power at various moments. But Grievous did not have this restraint, and he could not control himself. He truly was a rabid dog, one that was a threat if he was ever let off of his leash. While this limited his versatility and function in the scheme of things, using Grievous like an animal had many uses. But now we've reached a very fascinating part of our analysis. What was Palpatine's thoughts on Grievous's use of multiple lightsabers? Well, this is another factor that Palpatine never really cared about. While Dooku absolutely hated that Grievous used 4 lightsabers and viewed it as bad sport, Palpatine cared little for honorability of a duel. He had mastered the 7 forms of combat just to prove that he could, to prove his superiority. But to say that Palpatine truly cared for lightsaber combat would be completely and utterly untrue. He only viewed it as an exercise to grow better than the Jedi, to insult them further. The Sith had philosophically grown beyond lightsabers in his mind. They didn't need to prove themselves in direct battle to the Jedi. When it came to it, Palpatine was more than willing to display his powers in the Force to defeat his foes. On that notion, he cared very little whether a Sith used 1, 2, or 4 weapons, 4 lightsabers. And again, unlike Dooku, he didn't have a distaste for cyborgs. When Anakin lost his arm, Dooku said that he should have learned to fight with 1 arm, whereas Palpatine said that it put him aside as a war hero, a physical representation of what he had sacrificed for the Republic, and Palpatine loved the fact that Anakin had a cybernetic arm. He also didn't hesitate to place Anakin within a cybernetic body. Palpatine never truly looked down at cybernetics in any regard, whereas Dooku did, because Dooku was far more pompous. Dooku respected power in a refined form, a beautiful form, but Palpatine respected power for the sake of power. This is why in many respects, Palpatine represents the perfect Sith, where Dooku's ideologies clash with them. Palpatine is on record for saying that he does not care about the process, he cares for the result. This is why, even though Plagueis had reservations at first, Palpatine actively encouraged Darth Maul to use a saber staff. Dooku was a traditionalist when it came to dueling, and Sidious saw such things as trivial. In his mind, Grievous understood what it meant to be a Sith even more than Dooku did at times, using whatever they could to gain an advantage. The 4 lightsabers didn't even bother him a modicum. When he eventually became the Emperor, Sidious would continue to chase the high that he got watching Grievous. In the 2015 Darth Vader comic run, he would recruit a certain scientist by the name of Silo, one who had been the designer for Darth Vader's prosthetics. Using Grievous as his largest inspiration, he created a team of cybernetically enhanced individuals, all of them who were allegedly meant to threaten or replace Vader. Silo saw the Force as obsolete and wanted to prove to the Emperor that he could create a better servant for him than Darth Vader. One of these creations was a cybernetically modified Mon Calamari named Commander Carbon, who was a literal one-for-one ripoff of General Grievous. His body was modified to be able to hold 4 lightsabers, but to replace the fact that he didn't have proper training like Grievous did, he was also fitted with propellers in his back in order to aid him in combat. Sidious, of course, though, knew that this was a pale imitation of what Grievous had been, yet he wanted to use it for his technological advancements, especially on living creatures. Sidious held special interest in watching Vader dismantle each and every one of these abominations, especially when he embarrassed Commander Carbon. In the end, Sidious was not a purist when it came to cybernetics and modifications versus organic flesh. Dooku complained about Anakin's arm, but Sidious enjoyed it. Dooku called Grievous a monster, Sidious called him a masterpiece. Dooku despised how deplorably Grievous fought in battle, but Sidious believed that he had embraced the way of the Sith. All in all, Sidious was more pleased by Grievous than he let on most of the time, which is likely why he rarely ever asked Dooku to do anything to test or betray the droid general. He cared for him a great deal, because to him, he literally was a horrific masterpiece. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? What are your thoughts on Palpatine's insights into General Grievous, and how he actually liked him a great deal, and how Grievous had embraced the path of the Sith? Brutality, lacking all honor, respecting power in all of its forms. When Dooku saw a master, Palpatine saw a useful and a powerful tool. As always, my friends, thank you so much for visiting the channel today. May the Force be with you, and I hope you're having an amazing one.